want you to come with me somewhere. You've kind of got to go there in your imagination, okay? And I want you to go someplace that probably, honestly, it's probably a little bit before you have the ability to remember. It's probably early enough in your life that you actually can't get there. Maybe you've seen a picture of it. Maybe you'll have to, in the moment, reimagine it for a second. But whether you can bring it back or whether you have to reimagine it, I want you to come with me to you at some very young age, like classic toddlerhood. And you are standing on the edge of a pool or a dock by a lake, and you are there for the sole purpose of making your first jump into the water. Your first independent jump. And I want you to go there. I want you to get to that day, right? You've been in the water before probably, and there's somebody in the water who's there for you, like to do the unnecessary rescue that might be necessary, okay? They're there. And I want you to take yourself to that moment and just feel it. Like, feel the ideal summer day of 85 degrees and sunny. Feel whatever's underneath your feet. Is it a wooden dock? Is it the concrete around the edge of a pool? Is it the plastic edging of a pool that maybe is an above ground pool? Like what? Like feel that. Like feel what swimsuit are you wearing? Do you have, like, you're gonna jump in and it's safe, but do you have those adorable little floaties that go around the arm? Like do you have that? Are you like the kid in the picture and you got one of the tubes? You're gonna jump around in the tube. Okay. Just get yourself there. Just get yourself there. What are you feeling? There's probably, honestly, a little bit of fear. It's a first. There's probably some excitement. There's some maybe some great anticipation. What do you hear? You probably hear at least one, maybe multiple voices of people around you, friends or parents or grandparents or aunts or whatever it is, and they're encouraging you, and they're cheering you on, and you can do it, and they also kind of hope you just do it because they want to go eat. Okay, there's all sorts of, right? But you just know they're trying to encourage you. What are you thinking? What are you thinking? Like in that little toddler mind, like what's racing? Is it possible you think, okay, well, I know this, like I know this firm footing, like I'm very familiar with that in my little toddler body, but I also know the person in the pool, like I trust them, like we've got a good experience somewhere, like I've been in the water before, but somebody's always been holding me or walked me in, like just stand there for a second. Now, hopefully you have sunscreen on because I want you to stand there for the next few minutes. We'll come back, okay? We'll come back. I want you to stand there just for a minute because while today we jump back into this series of Jesus Continued. In fact, if you want to get a head start, I want to invite you to get to Acts chapter 16. Acts chapter 16 in your Bible, whatever form of a scripture you have with you, maybe it's electronic, whatever it is. And here's where we've been just in Acts. Acts is this story, like it is the story of Jesus Continued. We have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, all of these action-packed accounts of Jesus' life on the earth, his birth through his death and resurrection. A guy named Luke wrote one of those to his friend Theophilus, trying to help Theophilus understand who Jesus was. Acts is his follow-up letter to the same friend Theophilus to say, hey, look, I told you all about what Jesus did all the way through his death and resurrection. You got to hear what's happening now. Like that wasn't the end. That was the beginning. That might have even been the introduction. Let me tell you what's happening now. And the book of Acts is that. In the book of Acts, it's these early followers of Jesus, and there are these almost like cycles that emerge. There's some praying, and there's this power in the Holy Spirit. There's this impact and influence, and then there's these problems. These hardships. And then there's more prayer, and there's more power, there's more impact, and there's more problems. And that's the trek we've been on, much like maybe you traveled this summer. Maybe you've been somewhere, and maybe you've been somewhere on roads where you see mountains, and maybe you've been somewhere on roads where you just, you've seen trees and the beauty of trees, and notice it's summer, so they're all green, praise God. Okay, but you've been in these moments. Now, with those pictures, I did not want to cause any extra trauma, so none of those roads are obviously from Michigan because there would be orange barrels somewhere, okay? So none of that's happening, right? But we traveled somewhere, and there's curves, and there's twists, and there's hills, and there's ups, and there's downs, and there's some scenes that look amazing, and they're captivating. They're almost worth taking a picture. There's other scenes you just wish, this is just almost kind of boring, or, oh man, it looks like something happened there. There must have been a fire there, or an accident, or something there. Right? You see all of these things along the road, and that's Acts. That's Acts. It's a trek that we're constantly moving, following the work and the presence of Jesus through his Holy Spirit and these early followers of his. And by the time we get to Acts chapter 16, it's like the gospel, the story of Jesus is spreading rapidly. People are encountering and meeting Jesus every single day. Every single solitary day, the church is growing. There's nobody in the book of Acts who's like anti-church growth or anti-reaching people, or I like my church small. It just was impossible, right? It's just moving. It's moving too fast. And yet they're so devoted to Jesus, they can't wait for the next person to respond. Now, by the time we get to Acts chapter 16, we've been introduced to a guy named Paul, who used to be a radical persecutor of the church. He killed early Jesus followers. That was his thing. He killed them, and he helped other people kill them. He supported their killing of them. He has an incredible encounter with Jesus, a dramatic encounter. It's recorded in Acts chapter 9. So we talked about that several weeks ago. And now he's been so just caught by Jesus and who he is, and Jesus graced him, that now he's not killing Jesus followers, he's helping people become followers of Jesus. He's had such an intoxicating encounter with Jesus' grace and forgiveness and love and purpose and mission that he's like, I'm all in on this. In Acts chapter 16, he is on what we would kind of call his second missionary journey to parts of the world that hadn't yet heard of Jesus and heard of the fullness of the story of Jesus. And so he's just trying to get to them. He's trying to get the message to them. And he ends up in this place called Philippi. One of the first people he meets there is a gal named Lydia, who really is uniquely a person of influence and a person of wealth, which would have defied a little bit of the culture of the day. But he introduces Lydia to this personal and saving relationship with Jesus. And just as a little side note that might be interesting, Lydia is the first person in what you and I would know as Europe to fully surrender their life to Jesus. It's where the gospel hits Europe, which is pretty crazy because Paul was trying not to go there. And God just keeps like shutting down plans where he's trying to go other places and leads him here. And actually, so he stays there a little bit, and he's walking along one day, and there's a few of them. There's Paul, and there's a guy named Silas. There's a guy named Barnabas, and then there's Luke. Luke is actually part of the story who wrote this letter. So Luke's got a really up-close account of this one. Luke chapter 16, we're actually going to start reading in verse 16 as well. It says this, there's the guys Paul, Silas, Barnabas, and Luke. When we're going to the place of prayer, because that's what they do, we were met by a female slave who had a spirit by which she predicted the future. She's really got this evil spirit, this dark spirit, because there really is evil, and evil really does have power, right? There really is a Satan, and this evil spirit is working through her to like predict and tell people's future. Because by doing that, she's earning a great deal of money for her owners that way. But then she started following Paul and the rest of us, and she's shouting over and over and over again, these men are servants of the Most High God who are telling you the way to be saved. This gal is possessed by the spirit of darkness. What does darkness always do? Darkness always recognizes truth. Darkness is not unaware of truth and light. Darkness is trying to deceive us to cause us to miss truth and light. It's the most dark thing in the story is like, oh, those people have God. Those people have God. Verse 18, she kept this up for many days. Could you imagine like walking around in your job and walking around your neighborhood and wherever else you go, walking down the grocery store, and somebody just following along behind you? That person knows the God Most High. That person knows that person knows. Be just over and over. Like that's what's happening to them, right? These men are serving the Most High God, kept up for many days. Finally, Paul became so annoyed. Paul's got a lot of passion. I envision that Paul probably had a short fuse. Okay, so he might have but he lasted several days on this thing, right? He lasted several days. But then Paul became so annoyed by this constant shouting that he turned around and he said to the Spirit, didn't say to the lady, the issue's not the lady. The issue's not the gal. The issue is the spirit of darkness in the right. He turns around and said to the Spirit, in the name and the authority, in the abiding presence of Jesus Christ, I command you to come out of her. And at that moment, Spirit left her. When there is a truth and deception, a light and dark encounter, right? When we walk in the authority that Jesus said you could have as a Jesus follower, truth wins. Truth wins. Truth wins in this moment. In verse 19. When her owners realized that their hope of making money was gone, they seized Paul and Silas and they dragged them into the marketplace to face the authorities. Paul and the other guys with him, they help. They give freedom. They give hope and a way forward, a way out to a young slave girl who honestly is being manipulated and used by these guys, by these men. They're just trying to make money off her. They're just trying to make money off of her. To them, she truly is an object. She's like a tool in the factory or something that would make them money. It's just an object. And so Paul, he addresses this spirit, frees this girl in part because he's annoyed, but in part because he can. This is a human he's trying to free. Okay? And he's on his way to prayer, and what better time to do something very Jesus-like than when you're on your way to prayer, right? But these guys, they don't have a great response. But I wonder if they have an understandable one. In fact, if we could just put ourselves, let's set Paul aside for a second. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of these men who were using this gal to make money. Let's put ourselves in their shoes for a second, and let's just ask the question, what's our response? What's your response? What's my response? What's our response to the loss of control or comfort? That's really what they've lost, right? What have they've lost control over their income. They've lost the comfort that income brings. They've lost control over how they operate in this town of Philippi and what is allowed and what they give energy to. They basically, in the moment, lost apparently what we understand to be their primary workforce. And their response is to grab Paul and Silas by the collar and drag them in to the local authorities to be dealt with. What's your response? What's our response when we lose comfort or control? Let's just talk about it like them for a second. When we lose income, or we lose a job, or we lose a part of income, or we lose control, or what's our response? Now, you got to see what continues to happen and how this thing moves forward a little bit. Verse 20. these men who had lost their control and their comfort, they brought them, Paul and Silas, before the magistrates, and they said, "These men are Jews, and they are throwing our city into an uproar by advocating customs unlawful for us Romans to accept or practice, and oh, by the way, they have taken our money." But they are pushing against the cultural moment. Verse 22, the crowd joined in the attack against Paul and Silas, and the magistrates ordered them to be stripped and beaten with rods. And after they had been severely flogged, they were thrown into prison, and the jailer was commanded to guard them carefully. When he received these orders, he put them all the way in the inner cell. He takes them to the max security part of the prison, and he fastens their feet in the stocks. Verse 25. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God. And the other prisoners were listening to them. Paul and Silas, at about midnight, likely still bleeding, certainly with parts of their body swollen and bruised. Maybe eyes blackened, swollen shut. Having been publicly stripped and humiliated, sit in the depths of a prison, and maybe with pain in each breath that comes with cracked and out-of-place ribs, they sing. Paul and Silas, in those hours, have lost all of what would look like control and comfort. They don't have control to get themselves out of there. They can't really change the narrative. The whole town's against them. They can't post something online to make everybody see their side. They've lost the comforts of wherever they typically would have slept that night. They've lost the comforts of whatever they typically would have eaten that night. And you know how hard it is sometimes to sit down when you have an injury to get comfortable? Imagine your whole body being bruised and beaten and sitting on rock and concrete floors and chained. It's amazing to me. And they sing, like they pray, and they sing hymns to God. They sing these songs of praise and credit and trust and adoration. And they do it so much and with such persistence that the other prisoners just start listening in. Do you notice, like, this is really significant that Luke didn't write, and the other prisoners just heard them. No. They're listening. They're tuned in. Because who does that? Who gets beaten, knocked back, whipped, flogged, publicly humiliated, thrown into jail, and sings to the God they're in there, honestly, because of? And in a very healthy, challenging way, makes me grapple with the question that I want to invite you to grapple with. What's your response when you lose comfort or control? What's your response when you lose comfort or control. What's your response? What's your response when you, again, unexpectedly lose the job? What's your response when you unexpectedly lose the relationship that means so much to you? What's the response? What's the response when you lose an opportunity that you thought you deserved? What's the response when you get a little bit of ridicule for being a follower of Jesus? What's your response when you lose a cultural freedom you think you have a spiritual right to? What's your response? What's your response as a parent when you realize the teenager that lives under your roof is no longer the teenager you can control? What's your response? When you lose something we view as a comfort? What's your response? I'm just telling you right now, mine is not always to pray and sing hymns to God. However, what we're learning in places like Acts, what we're learning is that because of the Spirit of Jesus in us, it can be our response. It can be. It cannot probably be our own independent human response, but with the power of the Spirit in us, it can be. Do you know what else we're learning, friends, throughout this journey? What we're also learning is that we need to think about what our response would be. Because part of following Jesus is the reality of suffering. Over and over and over again, what we're finding is people following Jesus and suffering because of it. What we don't find is people over and over and over again following Jesus and their life going perfectly and without hiccup and without glitch. What we find over and over and over again with people following Jesus is people who experience sometimes mocking just like Jesus experienced mocking, ridicule just like Jesus experienced ridicule, hatred just like Jesus experienced hatred, loss just like Jesus experienced loss. Part of following Jesus in this world is suffering. And if we've built a theology that doesn't allow for suffering, then Luke's letter to Theophilus will make no sense to us. We will miss huge portions of God's strength. And so it's important for us to ask the question, how do I respond? How do I want to respond? How would the Spirit inspire me to respond? How would the Spirit inspire me to respond? Now, I want to tell you why else it's important. So let's pick it back up a little bit. Verse 26. Here's Paul and Silas, man. They're singing their lungs out, ribs hurting as they breathe in and breathe out, right? Verse 26. Suddenly, there was such a violent earthquake that the foundations of the prison were shaken. And at once, all the prison doors flew open and everyone's chains came loose. If we are willing to let the Spirit empower our response, if we are willing to let the Spirit empower our response when we don't have control, when we're losing comfort, when we can't orchestrate the answer, when we can't deliver ourselves independently from whatever it is we're in, we do give ourselves a chance. We do put ourselves in the position to suddenly see God do something that only God can do. We do put ourselves in the right place, in the right posture, in the right view angle to see Jesus do something that we would never be able to pull off on our own. And in fact, would be something greater than we would be able to ask or imagine. Paul and Silas were probably not singing hymns about the great earthquakes that passed. It's amazing, right? All the prison doors fell. Verse 27, the jailer woke up, and when he saw the prison doors open, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself because he thought the prisoners had escaped. Why is he doing that? Because that is the end result if these guys are gone. If the prisoners escape, the jailer knows that the boss is going to kill him, so he's going to take his own life. But Paul shouts, again, probably with a little bit of physical discomfort, right? He's just been beaten, but he shouts, don't harm yourself. Don't do that. Don't fall on that sword. We're all right here. We're all right here. We are all right here. Not we're both right here. Hey, not me and Silas are right here, but everybody that was in this jail 5 minutes ago is still here. All the people you think would run, they're still here. Don't do yourself any harm. They have seen this suddenly only God moment, and now in the next millisecond, they've saved a life. They've saved a life. Like, no, don't harm yourself. Verse 29, the jailer called for lights, rushed in, and fell trembling before Paul and Silas. He then brought them out, and he said, guys, what do I have to do to be saved? What do I have to do to be united with Jesus? The story keeps going. You can keep reading it this afternoon. The story keeps going. Paul and Silas, they go to the jailer's house. They introduce the jailer to a personal relationship with Jesus. This whole family surrenders to Jesus. All of them, they get baptized that night. Like it's remarkable. Supernatural moment after supernatural moment. Why? Because when Paul and Silas had no control left and they had lost all of their earthly comforts, they sang hymns to God and prayed. They leaned more in God's direction. They leaned more towards a Jesus who they knew had died for them. They leaned more in his direction. And I want to be very clear about something. They didn't lean in his direction because they knew they would get out of prison. Some of their closest friends had not been let out of prison. Some of their closest friends, in just weeks and months before this, had been beheaded, killed, stoned. They're like, it doesn't matter. We're still going in the direction of Jesus, the one who would save me. It's amazing to me. Let me ask you this. Where has control been lost for you? And how are you responding? Where's control or comfort already been lost? Where in school last year did the friend group that you thought was pretty solid and faithful, where did it crumble a little bit? And how are you responding? Where's the story you want a certain group of people to believe about your life? They just won't, for whatever reason, believe it. They're just not buying it. They won't give you the credibility you think you deserve. Where have you lost that? Where have you encountered unimaginable grief, and it's been a reminder to you that you never really had control in the first place, but you're deeply acquainted with that reality right now? We'll go here for a second. Where do you feel like you've lost some control and some comforts in the nation that you live in? And how are you responding? Where have you lost the comfort of strong physical health? And it seems like it's not turning back to healthy for you. It seems like you can't quite get over the hump. Where have you lost Here's the second question. I think it's important, it's just as important, maybe more important than the first one. What opportunities and miracles might you currently be missing because you're clinging so tightly to control and comfort? What might you be missing because you're clinging so tightly to control and comfort? I talked to a guy recently this week. It's a guy I have great respect for. And goes to a different church, and he was telling me about something happened at their church with a missions movement internationally. And he's telling me about the place and how great it is and what cool things God is doing. And I said, how many times have you been? And he said, I haven't been. He said, I just don't want to do 4 or 5 hours in a customs line trying to get back in the country. It's like, wait, what? What? You're clinging so tightly to a very simple comfort and missing out on the very thing you're telling me is great. Where are you standing on the edge of this pool and you're clinging to what you know? You're clinging you got your feet just like suction cupped to the whatever you're standing on. And you're clinging to the comfort of a relationship that you know is not great for you. Or a friend group that you know is actually working a little bit against your development and growth, but that's the comfortable one, and you can't imagine life without it. And so where are you clinging to the comforts of being able to go wherever you want? Because we live in a place where you can go wherever you want, and lots of us can afford to go, but you're clinging to that comfort and you're missing on what God may have you doing in one place instead of 5. Where are you clinging? Where are you clinging to the comforts of a job you know you shouldn't have taken? But now you got used to that income and you like that income, and so the slow erosion of your soul, if that's the cost, you want the earthly comfort and you'll cling to it. Where are you clinging to it? Where are we clinging? Comfort. Let me just ask you this. Just come with me for a second, okay? Come with me. Where are you clinging to the control and comfort of the seat you're sitting in right now, in this room or wherever you're joining online? And it's costing you the opportunity to see miracles and unique moves of God that you get to see when you serve other people. Where are you avoiding discomfort? Where are you avoiding letting go of control? And if you're honest, you know you're missing something. You know you're missing what God is inviting you into. You know you're missing. Where are you clinging to the control of your own story, of your own past, of your own history, and you're trying to right the wrongs, and you're trying to make it all okay, and you're missing the opportunity to experience unimaginable grace? Where are you clinging to your finances, because that feels like a comfort of security, and so you're clinging, and it doesn't really matter what God says or what he is saying or what he does say. You're going to control that because that's what feels safe and it's comfortable, and you're missing opportunities to watch him provide in miraculous ways and watch him give you ways to be involved in things you'd never be able to accomplish on your own. What I want to invite you to do today, I want to invite you to make a choice. I want to invite us to make a choice to jump into the pool. Let go of whatever that solid comfort and control platform is. Jump into the pool. Jump into the pool. Listen, Jesus is already in the pool. You're going to be fine. He's already in there. invite you to jump in. And this is really, much like it was for Paul and Silas, this is really just a moment of surrender. It's a moment of like saying, okay. Candidly, I don't have as much control as I thought I did. Control is an illusion. We've talked about that so many times. You don't really have as much control over most things as we think we do. And are my comforts really comforts? Do I really have to have them? Are my comforts gifts that I've turned into gods and I actually worship them by how tightly I cling to them? And by avoiding suffering at all costs? Play it back just like a couple lines before Paul and Silas are in jail. If we really knew we could help somebody, if we really knew we could free somebody, if we really knew we could deliver somebody, but that a beating in jail waited, would we give up the comfort? I'm not asking because I think that's an easy question. I'm not. I think it's a really hard question. But Paul and Silas, they're real aware of what's coming. Paul said more than once, I know wherever I go, man, hardship awaits. Hardship awaits. But I'm so committed to this Jesus. I so trust in the completeness of his rescue, and his comfort, and his compassion, and I'd rather him be in control. Today, I feel like we just need an opportunity to respond. I think the ask of Jesus is a significant one. I think the Spirit wants to reveal to us some places where we're clinging to comfort and control, maybe ways we haven't known. Or maybe in places we're losing it, we're responding a little more like the two men who had been abusing the girl than we are Paul and Silas. But the way of Jesus is always very different than the way of the world. He empowers us to live that.